Wait. Okay. Wait. Yes.
I'm just about to go full toxic mode today.
All right, here we go.
Let's go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cold Hard Truth podcast. I'm Jack Smith.
I'm Srikar.
I'm Anish Gupta.
And today, like the title says, we are redrafting the 2019 NFL Draft. We're doing picks 1 through 16. And for you guys, you can assume that each team knows exactly how each of these players is going to play their rookie season. They won't know anything into the future, however. They'll just be making their picks based off of what they saw in their rookie season and what they think could come in the future. And for the first pick, I think it's pretty simple. Kyler Murray won the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Cliff Kingsbury pounded the table for him early in draft process and stuck with his selection. And for me, he's going to stick with his selection again, drafting him again in the redraft.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's any reason for the Cardinals to deviate from their original selection. He became the Offensive Rookie of the Year, as you said, but I feel like we got to point out the fact that he did so with a relatively underwhelming supporting cast. And the Cardinals got him a dominant number one receiver now by trading for DeAndre Hopkins, so his numbers should be quite a bit better in his second year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think Kyler Murray is a great fit here. Obviously winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year. And he took a team that didn't have as much talent, and he won some big games. I think we mentioned it earlier, but again, he beat Seattle at their house, and he also beat Cleveland. Obviously not as good of a team we thought they would be, but they were still talented nonetheless.
Yeah, a pretty obvious selection. And we go to an even more obvious selection. Nick Bosa goes back to the 49ers just like he did in real life. There's no way they could pass up the Defensive Rookie of the Year and easily, I think, the best rookie player last year. They get Nick Bosa in the draft and in the redraft.
Yeah, like the Cardinals, the Niners have no reason to change their original choice. Nick Bosa proved to be as good as advertised, ultimately winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. He helped his team reach Super Bowl 54, and the 49ers fell short of lifting the Lombardi, of course, but I feel like Bosa helped them get within striking distance. And if the 49ers did win that game, I feel like he would have won Super Bowl MVP. But what might be most impressive is that I don't think Bosa never seemed to hit that dreaded rookie ceiling. You know, he put plenty of his pass rushing moves on film, but I don't think opponents still couldn't completely contain him. So I also feel like the offseason trade of DeForest Buckner is all the more reason to keep Bosa as the pick.
Yeah, I agree here. Nick Bosa, no question. His dominance over his rookie season just shows that he's got a lot of potential, and he proved once again why Ohio State is probably the best university for defensive ends. Am I wrong?
No. Unless
Not
Chase
really.
busts some miracle, then I think we'll still say that Ohio State's the best. And I would go as far as to say that Nick, I believe, will be better than Joey. You guys agree with that?
I don't know, but
A couple more years, but I could see it.
I've been unimpressed with what Joey Bosa has done the last couple of years. I just think that he's
I am.
He's a little bit overrated. A little bit overrated.
A tad bit, I agree. But Srikar, I disagree with you on Nick Bosa getting Super Bowl MVP if they would have won, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. So here's where our drafts start to differ a little bit. I have Josh Allen, edge from Kentucky, going to the Jets here. I believe right now at the moment, the Jets defense is a corner and an edge rusher away from being elite, and they get their edge rusher right here. I think Quinnen Williams was the smart pick in the actual draft, but I believe that the Jets kind of realized that they weren't in the market for a defensive tackle quite as much as they would be for an edge rusher. And after seeing how Josh Allen played in Jacksonville, there's no way they'd pass him up, in my opinion, in the redraft, as they get their dominant edge rusher of the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think the Jets are the first team to choose differently than they did initially. And that was obviously because Quinnen Williams, he wasn't the best fit for Greg Williams' system. So I would also go with Josh Allen. And while Allen wasn't quite as dominant as Bosa, I think he's a fine consolation prize. He finished his inaugural campaign with 10.5 sacks. I feel like Williams was largely used as a space-eating tackle during his rookie campaign. And what Greg Williams and his aggressive scheme needs and what the Jets lack is a premier edge rusher. So therefore they're going to scoop up Josh Allen here.
So Josh Allen is a great player, and I am totally fine with what you guys selected. So I had a pretty different look at this. I told the Jets to pick A.J. Brown with the third pick. Now that comes pretty surprising considering some might not even question him as even the best receiver in this class. But I think his fit in Adam Gase's system and his ability to just be a overall playmaker with the Jets offense, you give Sam Darnold that type of playmaker. I think they could have been extremely potent, extremely lethal. While passing up on Josh Allen is pretty hard, and don't get me wrong, I'm totally fine with them picking Josh Allen, but I just think AJ Brown would do a lot better in that system just because they would rely on him a lot more. And at the time, you got to think about it like this, like, Robbie Anderson's future is kind of questioned. His ability as a number one receiver is kind of up and down. Obviously, you got Le'Veon Bell. So if you can have this kind of big three, obviously depending on if Darnold can develop or not, but I think AJ Brown would be great help for him to develop into a good player. So I agree with Josh Allen here. I think with you guys, I'm fine with that. But I just think AJ Brown in this offense, I mean, it could really create some big sparks. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, see, because I kind of agree with you because I had AJ Brown as second to Josh Allen. But the thing is, what made me hold off on AJ Brown was that the receiver class this year is really deep, and the Jets could grab a solid receiver in this year's draft. And I don't think it was so pressing to grab AJ Brown. But I feel like edge rusher and just building the defense was the focus of this of the 2019 draft. So that's why I kind of went with Josh Allen there. But I could see why you would want to go with AJ Brown. I just hold off because this year's class was already deep.
Yeah, I would say with the Jets knowing that this 2020 draft class is stacked at receiver and really not stacked at edge, there's no way they could pass up Josh Allen, the best edge on the board, to go receiver. And also, I have a problem selecting receivers with probably even a top 5 selection because I think that the position isn't as valuable as a top 5 pick. Similar with running backs. I think they should go edge rusher because, I mean, dominant edge rushers are at a premium in today's NFL. And if you can get one, you really can help your defense stand out even more. So I just couldn't pass up Josh Allen. Anish, do you want to get started with the Raiders?
Yeah, but I had a quick question before we get onto them. Why? So there have been a lot of receivers or a decent amount of receivers picked in the top 5. One that comes to mind immediately is Megatron. So I can't really think of a bust that's come out of the top 5 in terms of receivers. So what makes it such a big problem to pick them in the top 5?
I just don't see the value of it. I think that the reason that we haven't seen very many busts in the top 5 is because there just haven't been that many great receivers that are worthy of a top 5 selection, and especially not AJ Brown. Like, I don't think
I agree with that. That's why I'm saying it's kind of a high risk, high reward here. But like, we've seen what he could do in Tennessee, especially in the latter part of the season. And I think in the Jets kind of system, he could do a lot more for that team than he could for Tennessee, because Tennessee is always a run first kind of ground and pound defensive team. With the Jets, their identity is still uncertain. Same with Sam Darnold. I don't know if he's going to be a star in this league or if he's going to be a bust. His future is so uncertain. And I think AJ Brown could easily help his trajectory. And I mean, while Josh Allen is a great prospect, a great talent, I just think AJ Brown could do more for that team.
I mean, I can see that, but I don't think he's better than CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, or even Henry Ruggs in this year's draft. So drafting him with the 3rd pick when they could get one of those 3, they know next year with the 11th pick, I just can't see them going him over Josh Allen.
Well, see, you guys bring up the 2020 draft, but the thing is, keep in mind this is 2019, so their last year in college is still uncertain. So career-ending injury could happen. They could easily fall off.
Well, the problem is we said they know that everything that's come up through free agency, how the players played in college, up to the draft. Like, they don't know who's going to go in this year's draft, but they know just about to what we know. So that's why I just think they would go Josh Allen over AJ Brown.
Fair assumption. Yeah, so let's go on to the Raiders. So I had them taking Josh Allen here. You guys mentioned everything, 10.5 sacks. What can go wrong here out of Kentucky? Great prospect. I have no problem with the Raiders taking him here. And I think this is a way better pickup than Cleveland Farrell, who we all thought anyway. Why would you pick him at 4?
Yeah, I agree with you there. I wouldn't go Cleveland Farrell. He was very underwhelming in his rookie season. But I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs here. It may come as a surprise to you guys, but Kyler Murray obviously lost out on Offensive Rookie of the Year. He nearly lost out on Offensive Rookie of the Year because of Josh Jacobs. But in my opinion, I think he was more deserving of the award. He had 1,150 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. He added on another 200 receiving yards. And I think he should be the Raiders franchise running back for the foreseeable future. But the reason I take him this early, because I don't think there's any chance the Raiders would land Jacobs with their next pick at 24. So instead of taking Cleveland Farrell, they pulled the trigger on Jacobs early.
Yeah, I contemplated going Jacobs here because if I'm the Raiders, I would be kind of confident he wouldn't make it to their next pick. And spoiler, he doesn't in mine. But I just think that they wouldn't pass up on their linebacker in the future. I have him going Devin Bush here. I pretty much penciled it in with this pick and the next pick as the two Devins. And I really had to think long and hard about which last name I should put next to those two. I ended up selecting Devin Bush with the Raiders because I think he matches their style of linebacker a little bit more than Devin White. And I think that he proved a little bit more than Devin White. Devin White, I still believe, has more upside, but I think Devin Bush's rookie season showed us a little bit more than White's did. So I have him going to the Raiders, who have been a linebacker-needy team for a while, and he's their linebacker of the future. Well, then I guess talking about the Bucs, I have them going Devin White. Their original pick, I saw no problem with it. I was really happy with that selection when they made it last year, and I have him going with it in the redraft. Not much to talk about. He's just a great linebacker. I think he's a perennial Pro Bowler in the future, and they keep their selection that they made at the original draft.
Oh, man, I think you guys are going to hate me for this. But, yeah, look, there's nothing wrong with the Buccaneers' original selection of Devin White. Let's get that right. He finished 2019 with 91 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 3 passes defended, an interception, 3 forced fumbles. And I agree with you, Jack. He should become a perennial Pro Bowler. However, the Buccaneers now know that they're going to land Tom Brady in free agency. So protecting him has to be priority number 1. So instead, Tampa is going to scoop up Jonah Williams from Alabama. Yeah, while a shoulder injury cost Williams his rookie campaign with the Bengals, he should be ready to start in 2020, and that's when Brady and the Buccaneers will need him. And in this year's draft, the Bucs have the 14th pick, so they could miss out on their tackle of choice. So by scooping up Jonah Williams, they're going to take that possibility out of the equation by grabbing one a year early.
Yeah, I think I can see that. I can see them picking Williams at 5, although it's kind of iffy on me just because his injury did shut down his entire season. I'm not sure if it was a torn ACL or a shoulder injury. I don't remember which one it was,
shoulder.
But shoulder. Okay. So yeah, I still remember. I think it was in August, and I think he just wasn't able to come back from it. So it's an interesting pick, but then again, it's a pretty big risk. And knowing that there's a lot of tackles in this year's draft, kind of like what Jack was saying about the receivers, I think the tackles. This is a tackle-rich draft, so I think the Bucs are kind of safe knowing that they can get a tackle here. That's why I kept the pick of Devin White, linebacker out of LSU. I mean, he was a very good complement to Levante David, who's starting to kind of get up there in age, and I think Devin White is a perfect way to kind of replace him and kind of get into his role, especially about his hybrid ability of tackling and being a hard hitter. I think it just showed throughout the year, like you mentioned, 91 tackles, 3 forced fumbles. I think he's got a bright future ahead in Tampa.
Yeah, the problem I have with Jonah Williams is I just can't see how a player plays 0 snaps throughout an entire season but still manages to raise his draft stock, 6 picks. And while they want to grab a tackle early so that they can assure that Tom Brady plays with one, I just think it's way too much of a risk to take someone that they have never seen play before, at least in the NFL.
I get that, but I feel like then again, as I said before, there's really nothing wrong with choosing Devin White again. But if I was them, I'd prioritize Brady first, and I'd prioritize protecting him. And I'm just a little bit skeptical because they're at 14, and I don't know if they're going to get the tackle they want. Of course, Josh Jones, Austin Jackson will probably be there, but I feel like Jonah Williams could be better than both of those guys. But I mean, if you want to, I feel like Andrew Thomas, that's the best chance of a tackle being there. But even then, I have more faith in Jonah Williams than Andrew Thomas. So that's why I go with Jonah Williams here.
And then we move on to the Giants. I really didn't want to keep their pick, but I just couldn't see a quarterback that played better than Daniel Jones because other than Kyler Murray, I think we can all admit that last year's crop of rookie quarterbacks was a little bit underwhelming. But the Giants need a quarterback, so I have them staying with Daniel Jones. I'm really skeptical of the way he plays and how often he puts the ball in the other team's hands or on the ground. So I'm going to have them keep the pick, but I really wish that I had someone else to put in this spot.
Yeah, just like you, Jack, I had to think about this one quite a bit because I don't think Daniel Jones has proved that he's a franchise signal caller, but I think he showed enough promise in his rookie season to make the Giants feel pretty good about taking him again in the redraft. Jones finished with 3,027 passing yards, 279 rushing yards, and 26 total touchdowns in 13 games. And while the Giants will have a shot at a quarterback in the 2020 draft, Tua Tagovailoa and Justin Herbert are even less of a sure thing than Jones appears to be 1 year into his career. Veterans like Cam Newton and Jameis Winston could be free agent options, but I think New York should be just fine keeping what it has.
I am really surprised at your guys' analysis of this pick. I thought this was a surefire. Daniel Jones, no question. I don't know what you guys saw. I don't know if we have two different eyes, but throughout the season, I thought he did pretty well. 26 total touchdowns to me is really, really good. That's, again, Baker had 27, and that was the record as a rookie, and he only played 13 games. Same thing with Daniel Jones, just one total touchdown shy. I actually like what he did. Yeah, he's got some turnover problems, but hell, every rookie does. Every rookie quarterback struggles to throw the ball without turning it over. Yes, he's got fumbling problems, but I think that can easily be solved over time. And not only that, he's got a bright future playing in a terrible, terrible system. I didn't like Pat Shermer. I didn't like his coaching ways. And obviously he didn't have Saquon for most of the year, a solid amount of the year. And he was also hobbled. And obviously his offensive line, it kind of stepped up in some occasions, but a lot of the occasions it was underwhelming, considering all their the money that they spent for them. And I think he did rather well in kind of a system that wasn't as good for any signal caller, really. And I think he's got a bright future ahead. So I'm really okay with the Giants taking Daniel Jones again.
Yeah, I think that is one way to look at it, is to look at the touchdowns. But I know that every rookie has turnover problems, but Jones was just on another level. And I wouldn't go as far as to say he has a bright future personally. But I can see you saying it. If I were them, I would have hoped that they could do a little bit better than their original selection, but they need a quarterback, and no other quarterback played better than Jones, who I still believe was underwhelming.
Okay, but I agree with that. And one, his schedule was all right. So again, I look at level of competition. I think he played pretty well considering the games he played. I think his Tampa game showed a lot of strides, him being able to come back and win that game. I believe he threw 4 or 5 touchdowns in that game, which was pretty incredible. And keep in mind his first 4 games he went 2-2, which isn't bad. And obviously he kind of slowed down once Saquon got hurt. But I think next year, 2020 season, will be a big kind of outlook for him. We'll get to see, how he develops with a overall better roster. And I'm sure the Giants are going to get either a tackle in the draft or some kind of offensive help. So we'll see how this goes. But in my opinion, I think Daniel Jones was a perfect pick here.
Interesting. We can move on to the Jaguars. I have them going with the first defensive tackle of many that were originally drafted. I have them going Ed Oliver out of Houston. 1 pick, actually, before Quinnen Williams. But I think Ed Oliver had a great rookie season. I still don't think he has the upside of Quinnen Williams, who went before him in the original draft, but he had a better rookie season. I think the Jags would like that. There's rumors that they're going to be taking a defensive tackle in this draft. They get that out of the way so they can go to a different position, maybe receiver or tackle, and they get Ed Oliver here, who I think is just on the level of Derek Brown or Javon Kinlaw this year. So they get him a year early, and they free themselves up to draft a different positional need in the 2020 draft.
Okay. So Josh Allen's off the board. So I think the Jaguars instead look to strengthen their linebacker core with the 7th overall selection. They're going to do that by scooping up Devin White, whom the Buccaneers passed on to get themselves an offensive tackle. Devin White, he's fast, physical. He's adept at coverage. I think he'd make for a fine addition alongside Miles Jack at the 2nd level. In reality, the Jaguars addressed their linebacker core by adding Joe Schobert in free agency this year. And don't get me wrong, Schobert is a solid linebacker, but he also cost Jacksonville nearly $54 million for a 5-year contract. So by drafting Devin White here, they can free up that money. They can free up that money to say, give Yannick Ngakoue the long-term deal he probably won't get from the Jags in real life. So I'm going to go with Devin White here.
So again, I see us going different ways here. I went on the offensive side of the ball, and I went with Elton Jenkins out of Mississippi State, the guard. And I think he is worthy of a top 10 selection. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think what he was able to do for Green Bay, especially in the latter half of the season, especially in pass protection, he was great for them, especially in the playoffs. And I think, again, like I said, big games do matter to me. And the way he was playing against Seattle and towards the end of the year, I think was great. And the Jaguars certainly need offensive line help. And I think his ability to pass protect would be great for Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, I like
whoever they have
Elgton
on the
Jenkins. I'm going to get to him a little bit later. I just don't see guard as the biggest need for the Jags. And I kind of like receivers and running backs. I'm not exactly sure if a guard is worthy of a top 7 pick in the draft because I just don't see exactly the value compared to Ed Oliver, who I thought had a better rookie year and will have a higher ceiling going forward, which is why I went him. And then speaking of defensive tackles, I had the Lions selecting Quinnen Williams, which might be a little bit of a surprise pick. A lot of people forget that many thought that Quinnen Williams would be the best player in the draft going into the draft last year. And while he had a rookie year that didn't live up to the hype, it's honestly because he wasn't on the field a whole lot and because he wasn't used correctly by my Jets. The scheme wasn't revolving around him, and the playing time he got did not reflect his talent. And I think that people will see that if he gets on the field this year, he is the player people thought he would be. And so I think that the Lions, after losing Damon Harrison, can really use a talent like Quinnen Williams on the inside.
Yeah, the Lions originally took TJ Hawkinson from Iowa in this spot. His upside is definitely intriguing, but he was limited to 12 games and 7 starts. He flashed at times, but finished his rookie season with just 367 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns on 32 catches. So instead of banking on potential, I feel like the Lions scoop up Ed Oliver here instead. Cornerback would also make a lot of sense as the Lions finished the 2019 season ranked last in passing yards allowed. But I feel like Oliver is a rare talent who can anchor Detroit's defensive front. As a rookie, Oliver amassed 43 tackles, 5 sacks, 2 passes defended, and a forced fumble with the Bills, who originally drafted him 1 spot later. So I think he'd be a key building block for Detroit. And they're going to have a shot at a premier corner with the 3rd overall pick in the 2020 draft, probably Jeff Okudah.
Yeah, I went with Ed Oliver here as well. I had him slipping to number 8. Like you mentioned, Srikar, he's a great overall pass rusher and just a run stuffer in general. But I wanted to go back to your pick, Jack. So I don't really see why the Lions would I just don't see that pick here, like, because in my opinion, tight end. Well, let me get back to the tight end first. I personally don't see tight end as a top 10 selection.
Yeah.
Just in general, I think you can easily get them in later rounds. But Jack, can you remind me why you believe? I forget who you chose, but can you remind me why you believe he would be better here than another defensive tackle?
Well, so you believe the defensive tackle is a need for the Lions, right?
Yes.
And so I know Quinnen Williams
Quinnen Williams, yeah.
I know he didn't get on the field a whole lot his rookie year, but I think that he still is the second best defensive tackle in this draft behind Ed Oliver, and I think he could show to be still what people thought he would be, which is the best defensive tackle in this draft when he gets a chance on the field. And I think he'll break out in his sophomore year, and he was the best defensive tackle on the board. It's their biggest need, in my opinion, in this draft. So I had them going him because Ed Oliver was gone the pick before.
So Quinnen Williams, sorry, that was the guy. Yeah, sorry, I just completely blanked there. But I find it weird that the Jets were second. I believe they were second against the run, or I believe they were top 5 against the run, and they had a pretty good defensive unit, and he wasn't on the field. So I find it very weird that they were thriving without him, and that's a big concern when I look at things. I'm not sure if he has any off the field issues, but I know his ability. Like, I don't think if Greg Williams was able to develop a top 7 defensive unit, it's pretty weird that Quinnen Williams was not on the field.
Well, no, I think that actually kind of proves my point a bit, is that they really didn't need him his rookie year, and he was sitting behind the players that were producing out on the field to learn from them after just to sit a year. Like, I think it shows that if the defense was indeed not doing well stopping the run or getting to the passer, then you would wonder, why isn't Quinnen Williams on the field? But they were succeeding without him, which is why I believe he got a lot less snaps. And now that they're thinning out a little bit.
No, but see, that's my point though. Why didn't they play him more? If he was a top 3 selection, they should have played him more if they were already being successful.
Well, because he really only had one tremendous season at Alabama, so he needed work. He was a work in progress, and so they took him. That he had a year now to sit behind, learn from these defensive tackles who you just said performed well without him, which is why I believe he didn't touch the field. Is because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so they were getting him time learning from these players to now come out in his sophomore year, where I think he will play a lot more and play better than he did. But he also was on the field for a decent amount of snaps. It's just not what you assume from a third overall selection. Yeah. Like he was part of that defense that was at one point the best run defense in the league. Now we're moving on to the Bills. I have the first wide receiver off the board here. We have A.J. Brown going to Buffalo. Him and Josh Allen, I think, will be an electric connection for the rookie season and years to come. The Bills really lack, I think, a number one receiver, a true number one. They've been able to make do with what they have. But A.J. Brown now, but now they have him. But imagine having A.J. Brown last year. I think that makes the playoffs a lot different because Josh Allen has a true number one to be able to use. And I think A.J. Brown would go off in that Buffalo offense and would be just tremendous.
Okay, yeah, I didn't go wide receiver. With Oliver off the board, I think the Bills instead address the second level of their defense. They grab former Michigan linebacker Devin Bush. He originally went to the Pittsburgh Steelers a spot later after they traded up. Bush appeared in all 16 games, amassing 109 tackles, a sack, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble for the Steelers. But the Bills could be tempted to draft one of the many premier wide receivers to come out of the 2019 draft. But I mean, as we know, they traded for a proven one in 2020 free agency instead. Adding Stephon Diggs gives quarterback Josh Allen a number one target he's lacked in his career. So I would hold off on a receiver.
So I went a similar direction with Jack. I went with DK Metcalf, though, out of Ole Miss. And I just think his ability as a deep threat would work really well with Stephon Diggs because he can also go underneath, and so can Diggs. I feel like Diggs would be a great compliment to him. And, again, level of competition is huge for me. And the way he stepped up in the wild card game against Philly, I believe posted 164 yards. Mm-hmm. And that was a very, very big game. And I think it proved a lot of doubters wrong. And obviously he was very hyped up due to his muscular build and his combine, his insane combine stats. So I think the Bills would love to have him here. I mean, if you can think about it, Metcalf, Diggs, and John Brown, that's pretty scary. I think Josh Allen's got a lot to work with there.
Yeah, that would be good too. I just think A.J. Brown on my board was a better receiver since I didn't have him going at 3. We went to the Broncos, who don't really get their original selection, but they get pretty close because they get Drew Lock, who they drafted later, but they have to take him here at 10 because otherwise I think he'd be snatched up by a lot of other quarterback-needy teams. What do you guys think? You guys have the same thing?
I do. Yeah, originally the Broncos drafted Drew Lock in the second round. They won't wait that long this time around because I agree, Lock probably wouldn't last until day 2. And though he only made 5 starts, Lock passed for 1,020 yards with 7 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He completed 64.1% of his passes and, most importantly, posted a 4-1 record. Presumably, he'll be Denver's starting quarterback moving forward. This pick was originally traded to the Steelers, who grabbed Bush. And while the Broncos might be able to move down and still get Lock, Bush is off the board, so the deal doesn't happen.
So I was really tempted to put Lock at 6, but again, I really liked what Daniel Jones did, so I think him going to the Giants at 6 was fine. So I had Drew Lock going here as well at number 10, and I'm a huge, huge fan of Drew Lock. I think he and Denver can easily be a playoff team next year. I really like what he does and how he's poised in the pocket, and especially what he was able to do posting a 4-1 record. I think that is not a fluke, and I'm really excited to see what he does next year.
Yeah, so they couldn't risk him falling, and we move on now to the Bengals. I have him selecting Jonah Williams. Srikar, I know you had him going earlier, but I just couldn't believe that after not playing at all, his draft stock would increase. But I think that what we've been talking about when we said that Joe Burrow going to the Bengals, that's not a bad scenario for him. It's because they have this guy coming back to shore up that left tackle spot. So I think that they keep this pick knowing, yeah, it's okay, he's not going to play this year, but we're going to have him next year when Joe Burrow comes, and we're going to take him just to the same spot. I think that if you told the Bengals they were going to do that, they'd be perfectly okay with that decision.
The Bengals know that they're going to end up with the number 1 pick in the 2020 draft and that they'll presumably take Joe Burrow with that pick. Therefore, I agree. It does make sense to draft a piece who can help with their future quarterback now. But with Williams off the board, I think the Bengals look instead to get themselves a future number 1 receiver. So in a redraft, they'll grab A.J. Brown. Operating in the run-oriented Tennessee Titans offense, Brown caught 52 passes for 1,051 yards and 8 touchdowns in the regular season. I think he'll be a great fit with the Bengals.
That's interesting pick, considering that they already have Tyler Boyd, John Ross, and AJ Green. I don't see how he would fit there. In my opinion,
I think he'd just be a good complement
selection.
I think he'd be a good complement to the other receivers. And
that's a big.
You could
I
dump
think
John
all
Ross.
of them have potential.
You could dump John Ross, but I like AJ Brown a lot with the Bengals, and I would probably. I'm just trying to help Joe Burrow out the most. So and with Williams off the board, you could also go O-line here. As long as you draft a piece that's going to help Joe Burrow, then I'm okay with it.
I actually went in a different direction here. I went with Devin Bush because I had him slipping this far, and I really don't like him just because he's good, and he went to Michigan, and he went to the AFC North, the Steelers, and he's going to stay in the AFC North in Cincinnati. Obviously, you mentioned what he was able to do. I believe he posted over 100 tackles, and that is a very good stat line for a rookie. And I think alongside Geno Atkins in the pass rush, I think that can be very deadly. And I think the Bengals just gotta keep adding to their defense. They have DJ Reader, right? So I think that front seven could be very, very good. Keep in mind they still have Carlos Dunlap and all these guys that we're talking about that I mentioned earlier. I think the Bengals would love to take Devin Bush here. And again, I don't see how A.J. Brown would fit there. I think Tyler Boyd is a very good complement to A.J. Green, and John Ross's potential is still there.
I'm just skeptical about A.J. Green and how much he's injured, but.
So, Srikar, if they did draft A.J. Brown here, would they still franchise tag A.J. Green, or would he be out on the open market right now?
I think he'd be out on the open market.
Okay, so that's interesting. If they want to have A.J. Brown play this year, learn behind A.J. Green, just because they know they wouldn't want to keep his contract, I can see that happening. I just think that with Jonah Williams still on the board, they'd like to take that tackle that can come in and play with Burrow next year. But I do have a receiver going here at 12 to the Packers, who get DK Metcalf, who immediately takes a 13-3 team that played with really only one receiver for part of the year, and they give him DK Metcalf. I think this team is a lot scarier and could push the Niners, honestly, in that NFC Championship game a little bit more than they did. Because I talked about the Packers all year, that while they had a great record, I really wasn't impressed with them because I wasn't impressed with their offensive weapons other than in the running game. So now that they get DK Metcalf, however, that's a much scarier roster on offense. Aaron Rodgers now has, multiple 2 running backs and 2 receivers to be able to target. And I think that offense is a lot better with DK Metcalf, and there's no way they'd pass him up here at 12.
Yeah, I agree. Interestingly, Brown's college teammate DK Metcalf will go 1 pick later here in my redraft. The Packers originally took Rashawn Gary. However, he spent most of the season sitting behind Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith. And with the Smiths filling Green Bay's pass rushing needs, the Packers will instead add a complement to Devontae Adams. They'll take Metcalf, who caught 58 passes for 900 yards and 7 touchdowns as a rookie. Big, fast, physical. He has the skill set of a future number 1 receiver. For the Packers, he'll be a guy who makes opposing defenses pay for paying too much attention to Adams. So with 2 high-end receivers on the perimeter and you have Aaron Rodgers under center, I think the Packers' passing attack would be nearly complete.
So at number 12, I also have them taking a receiver, but they're going to take my favorite receiver out of this class in Deebo Samuel. And I think he would be an amazing, amazing fit here with Devontae Adams. His ability to run the football, his ability to catch the football. I mean, if you saw it in the Super Bowl. So I thought if the Niners were to win, he would have won Super Bowl MVP, setting the record for the most rushing yards by a receiver in a Super Bowl game. And also he had about 100 yards from scrimmage. He should have been used more in the second half, but hey, I mean, the Niners choked the game, Srikar. Sorry about that. Should have used Deebo more. But I think in the Packers system with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback, his ability to run the football on the outside and catch passes for touchdowns, I mean, his yak ability, especially being used in Shanahan's system, I think we've just seen what he's able to do. And I mean, Matt LaFleur would have a field day with this guy. I think him alongside Devontae Adams just creates a great receiving core for Aaron Rodgers, and I think this offense would be a lot more deadly. I'm fine with Metcalf here, but I don't see how, like, where would Devontae Adams fit in that? Like with Deebo, right? You can use him in these short routes. You can also have him go deep. And same thing with Adams. Both of them complement each other really, really well. You can put both of them in the slot. You can have both of them move in motion. I think that this works really, really well.
And this wouldn't have anything to do with your seemingly partial man crush on Deebo Samuel, would it?
Not at all. I think again, my level of competition is a big thing for me. And what he was able to do throughout the year, especially in the big games, posting numerous 100-yard games against good teams in the playoffs as well. He had a really good game, obviously in the Super Bowl, and towards the end of the NFC Championship, he also had a good game. So I'm really, like, he blossomed into a number one with Emmanuel Sanders kind of bouncing in and out of the lineup, and I would be ecstatic if I was a Packers fan if I can get him with the 12th pick.
Yeah, we talked earlier about the Raiders passing up Josh Jacobs, not knowing if he'd be available at their next pick. And unfortunately for them and mine, he is not. I have him going right here to the Dolphins at number 13. The Dolphins, Srikar, in your mock draft, you had him taking a running back in the first round this year. And I think that they get a better running back than DeAndre Swift, who you mocked to them. And they get him in this year's draft. Josh Jacobs, the second best offensive player, I think, this year, rookie-wise. So they get him at 13, which is a steal. I just didn't think that any of the other teams would take a running back this early, and the Dolphins get him now to fix a running game that really was non-existent last year.
Yeah, so like the Bengals, the Miami Dolphins appeared likely to take a quarterback in the 2020 draft. Kind of split between Herbert and Tua, but as of late, I've been seeing more people saying Herbert. So going off of if the Dolphins take Herbert, I'd probably take Marquise Brown. Christian Wilkins was a fine rookie addition for Miami. But in my redraft, the Dolphins take a receiver who can maximize the impact of Herbert's huge arm, and I think that comes in the form of Marquise Brown. Brown caught 46 passes for 584 yards and 7 scores as a rookie. He is a burner who could stretch the field for Miami, and he could take advantage of the coverage commanded by Devontae Parker. So this would help ensure that Miami's next quarterback, whether Herbert or Tua, is set up for success.
I'm kind of questionable on that pick, considering I just don't know why you would pass up on a guy that you guys might think is not a first round talent, but I think he is. Max Crosby out of Eastern Michigan. I think at 13, I think that's a great pick for the Dolphins, just because I believe he had 4 forced fumbles last season as a rookie, and his ability to blossom in that Raiders defensive line was really astonishing to see. And I think for the Dolphins, he could be a very, very good addition alongside Van Noy and Shaq Lawson.
Yeah, so with Josh Jacobs available, I couldn't put Crosby here, even though I was really thinking about it. And I do think he's a first-round talent. We're not going to get to him in mind this episode. We'll see him in pick 17 to 32. But just Josh Jacobs being on the board for me, I had to have him go here to the Dolphins because they've always.
But they have Jordan Howard, so why? I don't see this whole running back by committee thing. The Dolphins don't need that. I think Jordan Howard is a perfect.
I don't think that it will be a running back by committee, even if they have Jordan Howard. I kind of disagree with you. I don't think can be a standalone 3-down back for the Dolphins.
He's shown it before, though. He's had 2 1,100+ yard seasons. That's not a thin air.
But you need to get younger, and I think that Josh Jacobs brings the youth and the upside for the future.
Howard was drafted 4 years ago. I don't see any, like, while he's hasn't been as consistent since Chicago, I still think he can easily revitalize his career. And I could be very wrong, but I mean, he's shown that he can be a number 1 back.
But I just really don't think. I think Josh Jacobs proved that he has top 10, top 5 back potential even in his rookie year. Jordan Howard, I think we can all agree, doesn't have that. And
I think he does. If he's put in the right system and he's given enough touches, again, 1,300 yards, 1,100 yards, that's top 10 material.
But is that the Dolphins system with absolutely no offensive line?
Mm-hmm. The Bears didn't have as good of an offensive line in 2016 and 2017. While it was better than what the Dolphins have now, they are investing in it. And keep in mind, they will probably take a tackle this draft. They will have Eric Flowers. While obviously we all agree wasn't the best signing, he still did pretty well at guard for Washington a few games. I think their offensive line definitely got better after trading Laramie Tunsil, trading all the way. I think also got rid of Jawan James, if I'm correct. And I think they're trying to rebuild it. They're going younger with it, and I think Jordan Howard can easily flourish. But again, I agree with you in the sense that there's a bit uncertainty there. But like saying that he has no potential is, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Again, Josh Jacobs would be a great fit in a team where he would be the clear-cut number one back, no committee. Even though he did that at Alabama, I think the Raiders showed that he doesn't need a second running back to work with him.
So if you believe in Jordan Howard's potential, I can completely see you not going Josh Jacobs. But personally, I think that Josh Jacobs has a top 5 back potential in this league, and I don't think Jordan Howard has that. And I think that the Dolphins will want to bring in Jacobs to shore up that run game that really was non-existent last year that we touched on. And we're going to
I think just quick note on that. I think I agree that Josh Jacobs has top 5 talent. But I think it's just kind of think about like how he would fit in where. Like I don't see Josh Jacobs doing the same thing for the Dolphins as he did for the Raiders. Because keep in mind the Raiders have a lot better offensive line than people give them credit for. And again, while Josh Jacobs has that talent, I don't see him doing the same things that he would for the Raiders in Miami.
Yeah, he might not do the same thing his rookie year, but I think there's no doubt that he'd be able to grow and adapt the offensive line in Miami. And as they upgrade it, will be able to do better, I guess, would be this hypothetical upcoming season. Yeah, and then speaking about offensive line and upgrades, I have the Falcons upgrading their offensive line here. I believe the original pick was Chris Lindstrom, but here I have them going Elton Jenkins, who you mentioned previously, Anish. I believe he is the second I'd say he is performing like the best offensive lineman in this class so far. Obviously, we haven't seen Jonah Williams play yet, but easily the best guard. I think he's better than Lindstrom, which is why I did not have them sticking with their original pick. As a pass protector, Jenkins did wonders on the Packers' offensive line, and I think the Falcons would like that as part of their offensive line for this year and years to come.
With the 14th pick in the 2019 draft, the Atlanta Falcons took Chris Lindstrom. I have them doing the same in the redraft, even though Lindstrom was limited by injury as a rookie. He spent most of the season on injured reserve, but he did make 5 starts, and he showed a lot of promise in those starts. I was looking at PFF, and it said Lindstrom didn't allow a sack and committed just a single penalty. And Atlanta also went undefeated after Lindstrom's return from injured reserve. So, I mean, in my opinion, taking Lindstrom in the redraft makes sense, even with his limited role. I mean, Atlanta isn't likely to find a guard with as much upside with the 16th pick in 2020. And with Todd Gurley now in the fold, I feel like solidifying the interior line is very important.
Yeah, Srikar, you convinced me to stick with this pick here at Chris Lindstrom. In the 4 games he started, they went 4-0. And like you said, 1 penalty, didn't allow a sack. I think this is great coming from Boston College. They do have a good history with offensive line, and I don't really see a problem with going with the same guy here.
So, Anish, I know he's off your board, but Srikar, why would you put Lindstrom over Jenkins?
I mean, because I don't want to take the risk of getting another offensive lineman when the one you currently have is producing and he's performing. Like, I get it. Like, he was limited and he only had 5 starts, but in those 5 starts with that amount of promise and that amount of potential, I feel confident about staying the same with that pick. And especially looking at that stat with Atlanta going undefeated, it's all about having a winning presence and adding Jenkins into Atlanta's system. It's taking a risk, in my opinion, especially when you have Lindstrom already starting.
See, but if they knew how they would play, at least their rookie year, like they'd know that Lindstrom would only play 5 games, and they know Jenkins would be
it's 2 different systems.
Packers and Falcons I think Jenkins is a better pass protector. I don't see again. Yeah, the reason why I had Lindstrom here is because Jenkins was off my board because I believe he's a top 10 talent, and again, his pass protection is second to none in this draft class.
Yeah. So 15, the Redskins was actually really interesting for me, because I knew they needed to go quarterback. But like we said, the quarterback class this year was pretty underwhelming. Dwayne Haskins did not live up to, really what we thought he could do. And I thought about them sticking with him, but I had to go Gardner Minshew because of how much better he played. And honestly, I think that the script has been changed on Haskins, and people believe that he really isn't going to do what he did at Ohio State. And they're actually a lot higher on Minshew, which is why, I got kind of caught up in Minshew mania a little bit, but I had to have him go here at 15 because they needed a quarterback, and I believe he was the best on the board with Murray and Jones gone.
Yeah, originally the Redskins drafted Dwayne Haskins here. However, there's a chance that Haskins won't even be the team starter in 2020 because Ron Rivera traded for Kyle Allen, who started for Rivera with the Carolina Panthers last season. And I'm actually a believer in Kyle Allen. I think he shows a lot of promise. So instead, Washington will take Carolina's 2019 first-round pick, Brian Burns. I think he was a solid situational pass rusher for the Panthers as a rookie, finishing with 25 tackles, 7.5 sacks. And scooping up Burns here will give Washington maximum flexibility with the second overall pick in 2020. The team can still take Chase Young, as many expect to happen, but with Burns in the fold, trading down or taking a quarterback will also be premium options.
So I was pretty torn between Gardner Minshew and Brian Burns, and I usually don't agree with Jack on these picks, but I actually went with Gardner Minshew here. And just a note on that, Srikar, I mean, they already know they're going to take Chase Young, and they already have a pretty stellar defensive line. So I that's why I kind of went with Minshew over Burns. He had a good year when he played. He was he had very few turnovers, which was pretty surprising for a rookie. I believe he went like 4 games without throwing a single pick until he played Houston, if I'm correct. And he had a pretty decent season. Washington, they're starting to try and kind of rebuild this team. We've kind of mentioned it over the past few episodes that they're heading in the right direction. And Dwayne Haskins, I think it's just he's still learning the game in general, obviously only playing 1 season. And a lot of scouts know that. And like you, Srikar, I'm a huge fan of Kyle Allen. Especially under Ron Rivera, he went 5-1. So I'm a believer that he will be the week 1 starter, but I think Haskins still has time to learn. But I think Minshew is just overall a better quarterback last season and easily top 3, top 4 in this class. And what he was able to do for Jacksonville, he was able to play pretty well in some big games. And if I'm Washington, I'm happy with Minshew here.
Yeah, we talk about Brian Burns. I actually had the Panthers sticking with their pick at 16. Brian Burns is still available, and I have them taking him right here. I think that he's a peg below Josh Allen and Nick Bosa, but he's still a great edge rusher. And I think he showed a lot when he was on the field for the Panthers this year, and I don't see any reason for them to change up their pick. I think he's got the potential to be a Pro Bowl edge rusher, and I think that they will like their original pick, and they'll stick with it because Brian Burns had a good rookie season, and I think he's got a lot more in the coming years.
Yeah, with Brian Burns off the board in my draft, the Panthers instead address a future need by grabbing Sean Murphy-Bunting, originally selected 39th overall by the Buccaneers. Murphy-Bunting goes to Carolina 23 picks earlier here. And you might be asking why, because Murphy-Bunting was fantastic as a rookie, finishing with 44 tackles, 8 passes defended, 3 interceptions, a sack, and a forced fumble. He appeared in all 16 games for the Buccaneers and made 10 starts. He was also named to the all-rookie team for his efforts. And grabbing Murphy-Bunting, that helps the Panthers prepare for the departure of number 1 cornerback James Bradbury, who signed with the Giants in 2020 free agency.
That's an interesting pick, Srikar. I think since Brian Burns is off your board, I'm fine with that pick. Because the Panthers, again, they're unsure if they can land Jeff Okudah, so I think that's a solid pick up there. Since Brian Burns is available in my board, I had them sticking with their pick. Same to you, Jack. I think his 7.5 sacks were no fluke, and I think his ability as a pass rusher is pretty good coming out of college. I believe it was Florida State. That's where he went to, and I think obviously now that the Panthers are kind of starting to hit the reset button, I think he's a great young piece that they can start with. Obviously, the departure of Luke Kuechly was pretty troublesome, but I'm sure he learned a lot in 1 year of Kuechly's ability to be a kind of a run stuffer and a pass coverage kind of guy. So I think Brian Burns can easily develop both sides to being a linebacker of his caliber, and I think he can easily develop into a perennial Pro Bowler.
Yeah, so we're building up to the 2020 NFL Draft. Just thought we'd take a quick step back and redraft the 2019 one. Episode containing 17 through 32. Those picks will be coming out soon. Let us know down in the comment section who you want your team to redraft in the 2019 redraft. We're really excited for the 2020 draft. we'll be able to get a draft recap out to you as soon as possible for the first round. Like us and subscribe so that you can be notified when we have new content, and we will see you next time.